Hello, my name's Andrew Brooks. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is going to be a review of the new Brian Epstein biopic, Midas Man. Now, before we get on to the review itself, just a couple of things. Usual thing, hello to all new subscribers. Thank you very much. If you're not a subscriber, click the link down here. And also there's a link up here. If you click that, it's called Buy Me a Coffee, and it just slings a couple of quid down the internet at me. Helps keep the channel running, help me buy new equipment or records for me to review at a later date. But anyway, enough of all that. Let's get on with the matter in hand. Last night I was invited along to a swanky hotel in London where they had a press preview of the Midas Man film, and I have to say I've been really looking forward to this film for a couple of reasons really. One, I'd like to see how they were going to sort of portray Brian's complicated life in a movie, in a biopic. But secondly, I love obviously, you know, old stuff from the 60s, and I was really intrigued to see how they sort of turned modern day Liverpool, or wherever it was they filmed it, into 1960s Liverpool. The cast are as follows, and you have to excuse me because I have the names written down here. So Jacob Fortune-Lloyd, he plays Brian in the movie, and the Beatles were Jonah Lees, Blake Richardson, Leah Harvey-Elledge, and Adam Lawrence, and they played John, Paul, George, and Pete Best. And then Wallace Campbell came along a little bit later in the movie, and obviously he played Ringo. Now there's a cast of quite a few well-known people in there, and I was quite intrigued to spot the people and the faces that I knew. I might not be able to put a name to them, but one that I did was an interesting portrayal of Alan Williams by one other than Eddie Izzard. Now, I hadn't read anything about this movie. Obviously, I knew it was being made, but I hadn't read any of the sort of synopsis about it, or seen any of the trailers or any of the sneak peeks or anything like that. And I have to say, I'm really pleased to say, I really enjoyed it. The story itself is about Brian's life, but it's about it after he meets the Beatles. So you've got like 10 minutes before he meets the Beatles, just sort of setting up the backstory, showing you his family life, and you know where he was at that moment in time. Now I'm pleased to say it did actually roll on, sort of moved along quite quickly. It didn't sort of linger on little minutiae of Brian's life, and it does skip along at a steady pace. And you probably sort of recognise quite a few sort of little Beatleisms in there. You got George saying to George Martin, "Oh, I don't like your tie," and all that sort of stuff. So as you watch the film, you'll be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard that in a story somewhere." So they have picked up on little bits of the Beatles story. So the film basically is representing Brian's life and the different love he had for different people in his life. And it's, the sad story of really, at the end of the day, he didn't actually find true love for himself. He had lots of love for other people, the Beatles and Cilla and Jerry, as you see in the movie, but he never actually found anything for himself. So let's address the one really big elephant in the room, and that relates to the music. And I'm guessing for copyright reasons and issues, they couldn't actually use any Lennon, McCartney, Harrison sort of compositions. Fortunately, as it's at the beginning of the Beatles story, they relied an awful lot on the cover versions that the Beatles used to play in Hamburg and the Cavern, and I'll come on to the Cavern a little bit later. So the music itself, although it doesn't actually have Beatles music in it, it has music that the Beatles played at that time. And you don't actually see any sort of concert footage or anything like that, but as I say, it does jog along, and the story is told basically with Brian narrating it sort of through the years, skipping past things. If there's a year where nothing really happens for Brian, It will skip along, as I say, at quite a fast pace. In my mind, there's two songs that are missing from the film, and the first one is "You've Got to Hide Your Love Away," which was obviously the Lennon-McCartney song written about Brian's sort of love and homosexuality, that he couldn't obviously come out openly back then because it was illegal still in the UK. So yeah, "You've Got to Hide Your Love Away" is sort of, that is a glaring omission. And secondly, there is another song right at the end of the film, which unfortunately they don't use, they don't perform, and really it's such a shame, because it's at that point which sums up Brian's life, and you'll see why. I'm not going to spoil it by telling you the song, but it's right at the end. You'll know it when you see it, and you think, oh, that's such a shame that they couldn't use that song, because it really does sum up everything about the Beatles and Brian. Now, in my mind, I did touch on it a little bit earlier by listing the sort of the Beatles and Brian, the actors who performed them. Now, I have to say, I thought the casting was brilliant. There's passing resemblance to Brian and the Beatles. Not too much, but it's enough there. And they do introduce themselves at the beginning of the film. "Hi, I'm John, and I'm Paul," and all of that sort of thing to Brian, so you know who they are through the narrative. I've only got one very, very, very minor criticism about the casting, and that is the actor that plays John Lennon. He's quite short, and throughout the film you can see the other three sort of towering above him. So that's my only minor criticism, but other than that, I have to say they've done a really fine job. There are a couple of standout moments in the film for me. The first one is how they made Liverpool look, the early 60s Liverpool look in a modern day. And it's great, you've got the old shop fronts, and you've got what you can imagine Matthew Street with the Cavern basically being the fruit and veg warehouse that it used to be. And there's none of the bars that you go when you go down Matthew Street now. It's just wall-to-wall bars. It is literally old warehouses. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was great. And the second part of the film is when Brian goes down to the Cavern. They've recreated the Cavern really, really, really well. You meet Scylla there. But for me, the best thing about it all is when Brian's watching the Beatles on the little stage, you get the reverse angle as well. So you get to see the Cavern from the Beatles' perspective, with the crowd, albeit quite a small crowd. I can imagine the Cavern would have been filled with a lot more. But it's great, the interaction between the band and the audience, and you could see how, and you could just imagine how near that they were, and they could interact like that. And the other thing was Eppie's view of when he's standing in the Cavern and he's watching the band for the first time. And basically he's in his own little world. It's as if there's no one else in the Cavern and they're playing just for him. For me, that was just one of the standout moments in the film. Who is the target audience for this film? Obviously, you're going to get the die-hard Beatle fanatics, such as myself. Really looking forward to seeing it. And you're also going to have people maybe from that sort of, who aren't even Beatle fans really, who are from that sort of time, just for a bit of nostalgia. Is it going to attract the younger generation? Well, in today's society, LGBTQ society that the youngsters are all aware of, and they fully embrace that whole thing now. I can imagine it's going to be quite a shock for them to see how it was back in those early 60s when homosexuality was illegal, and the things that Brian had to go through to find what he thought was going to be love. So it's I can see from their perspective there's going to be quite shocking. For us, obviously we've grown up with the Brian Epstein story, and we know the problems and the troubles that he had. So I can see that the youngsters are probably going to take Eppie's story to heart, and possibly feel for him, what he had to go through when you compare it to today's society. Now, while I was watching the film, another film sprung to mind, and I thought, do you know what? You could have a little crossover bit in the middle, but this is the perfect sort of continuation of a 1970s, I think it was made for TV film called Birth of the Beatles. And it's sort of, that tells the story of the Beatles before they met Brian. And I think it actually finishes when they go to America. And it's got a similar sort of feel to it. And it could be like a continuation, Birth of the Beatles to the Brian Epstein years or something like that. So here's an idea, okay? Up here is a link and it's on YouTube. So follow that link and it will take you to Birth of the Beatles film. Watch that before you watch the Midas Man film. And for me, I thought, do you know what? That's sort of like a great continuation for the Birth of the Beatles film, which I have to say I really love. I haven't seen it for quite a while, so I'm going to click the link myself to watch it after this. Now, how can you watch the film? The film, although I saw it at a cinema on a big screen, which was brilliant, and the surround sound and all of that, it's going to be available on Amazon Prime from Wednesday the 30th, excuse me, Wednesday the 30th of October, which if you're watching it now is next Wednesday. And as I say, it's going to be on Amazon Prime. No idea if it's going to come out as a DVD or Blu-ray or if it's going to have a cinema release. I very much doubt it. But, if you've got access to Amazon Prime, check it out from Wednesday onwards. So my overall opinion of it, do you know what? I'm giving it a 4 Macca Thumbs aloft out of 5 for the film. I think it's great. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Hello, my name is Brian Epstein.
Hello, my name is John Lennon.
My name is Paul McCartney.
George Harrison, how do you do?
Pete Durst.
What I saw on that stage, I shall never forget it. I want to represent you, be your manager.
Well, you've got no experience, Mr. Brian.
Well, how hard can it be?
They're good musicians. I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole.
Those boys will be bigger than Elvis.
Our roster of artists spreading the Liverpool sound to every town in the country.
I heard that you almost missed your flight home because of my boys. They call that Beatlemania.
Now, the Beatles!
You have to take it slow.
Slow down. I've hardly started.
You've got so much heart. Give it to someone.
Your brother asked me to ask you why you've got a Mr. Tex Ellington on a retainer of...
I built this business. If my brother has something to say to me, he can say to my bloody face.
You never were like other children. You reached for the stars.
I Want to Hold Your Hand is #1 in America. I promise I will be there to look after you. You're a hard act to follow.